A Pontiac engineer once hid two hand-built sports cars in wooden shipping crates inside the factory to keep General Motors from sending them to the crusher. One of those cars is now worth over $1 million. It has fewer than 1,500 miles on it. It was never sold to the public. It was never reviewed by a single magazine. The car is called the Banshee, and in 1964 it scared GM so badly that they shut it down, stole its design for the Corvette, and then spent the next 24 years making sure Pontiac never built anything like it again. And the reason GM was so afraid of it comes down to a single set of numbers that Chevrolet did not want the public to see. If you had asked anyone at General Motors about John DeLorean in 1963, they would have told you he was the future of the company. Brilliant, driven, maybe a little too sharp for his own good. They had no idea what he was about to do. DeLorean joined Pontiac in 1956 and climbed fast. By 1961, he was chief engineer. By 1965, he would become the youngest division head in GM history at just 40 years old. But before any of that happened, in the summer of 1963, DeLorean and his lead engineer, Bill Collins, sat down and started sketching a car that was never supposed to exist. The project was called XP833. No corporate approval, no formal budget. Just two engineers who believed Pontiac needed a two-seat sports car to fight the Ford Mustang. Collins pulled together a small team, and by 1964 they had built two working prototypes from scratch. The first was a silver hardtop coupe, running Pontiac's test-bed 230 cubic inch overhead cam inline 6, making 165 horsepower with a single carburetor or 215 in sprint tune with a 4-barrel. The second was a pearl white convertible powered by a 326 cubic inch V8, making roughly 250 horsepower. Both cars sat on a tiny 90-inch wheelbase, hand-shaped fiberglass over a one-piece steel platform, coil-over double arms up front, a live 10-bolt axle with a 4-link Watts-type setup in the rear. Power went through a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual. The coupe weighed around 2,200 pounds. The convertible came in closer to 2,800. A 1965 Corvette Stingray tipped the scales at over 3,200. The Banshee was roughly 500 pounds lighter than the most popular American sports car on the market. The engineering was years ahead of its time. The overhead cam 6 used one of the first fiberglass-backed toothed timing belts ever fitted to an American engine. The seats didn't move. Instead, the pedals and steering column slid back and forth, and the body was designed so the convertible could be turned into a fastback by pulling off the soft top and bolting on a hardtop piece. One platform, two setups. That weight gap is where the math starts to get ugly for Chevrolet. DeLorean's plan was to offer the Banshee with optional V8 power up to the 389 tri-power, which made 360 horsepower. Put 360 horsepower in a car that weighs 2,500 pounds, and you have something that would have embarrassed the strongest Corvette on the road. The 1966 Corvette's top engine was the 427, making 425 horsepower, but it sat in a car that weighed 3,000 pounds, with a big block lump hanging over the front axle. The Banshee would have been faster, lighter, and better balanced. And DeLorean wanted to sell it for around $2,500. A base Corvette cost over $4,100. It was a car that would have made the Corvette look overpriced. DeLorean put together a pitch book with design sketches, engineering specs, and a market study showing over 30,000 units per year. He brought it to GM President Ed Cole and Chairman James Roche at the General Motors building in Detroit. The room went quiet. Roche stared at the numbers, and then he said no. The Corvette Stingray had not yet broken 30,000 sales in a single year. A faster, cheaper Pontiac sports car would steal from the Corvette. And inside General Motors in the 1960s, there was an unwritten rule carved into the walls of the 14th floor. Only Chevrolet would sell a two-seat sports car, period. DeLorean wasn't the only one who wanted it. Oldsmobile chief engineer John Belts had shown up in Pontiac's design studio trying to claim the XP for his own division. Neither man could get past the 14th floor. DeLorean tried again. On February 23, 1966, now promoted to general manager of Pontiac, he went back with fresh data and running prototypes. The board shut it down for the second time. The GM board buried the XP833 for good. That was only round one. On September 10, 1965, months before that final rejection, an internal memo had already sealed the Banshee's fate. The memo was sent to Bill Mitchell, GM's vice president of design. It told his staff to take the XP833's clay model and interior designs and rework them as a Chevrolet. Not inspired by, not shaped by. Rework them as a Chevrolet. The Coke bottle pinch behind the doors, the hidden headlamps, the fastback roof, the cam-style chopped tail, all of it moved across the hall to Chevrolet's studio. Collins later named the main design starting point for the XP833 as the 1963 Corvair Monza GT show car, not the Mako Shark II that usually gets the credit. Side-by-side photos prove it. Pontiac started with Chevrolet's show car, made it better, and then watched Chevrolet take it back. 3 years later, that design became the 1968 C3 Corvette Stingray. One of the most praised American cars ever built was born from a Pontiac that General Motors refused to let exist. And the only people who knew it were the ones who had been told to keep quiet. While Chevrolet got the Banshee's soul, Pontiac got a consolation prize. They were told to build a version of Chevrolet's new F-body platform. That car became the 1967 Pontiac Firebird. A good car, but not the car DeLorean wanted to build. Pontiac could have stopped there. They didn't. The Banshee kept coming back. In 1968, Pontiac built the Banshee II, a first-generation Firebird 400 wearing sleek fiberglass skins over the factory panels, with the 400 cubic inch V8 under a louvered hood. It was a test bed, a concept car, a quiet way of keeping the idea alive inside a company that had already said no. While Pontiac was building show cars, the real damage from the Banshee's cancellation was spreading through the company. DeLorean's anger with GM's red tape didn't start with the Banshee, but the Banshee made it personal. He had built something better than the Corvette, watched GM steal the design, and then been told to build a Camaro copy instead. That kind of thing stays with a person. In 1974, Pontiac tried again with the Banshee III, a space-age restyle of the second-generation Firebird, wearing a long, sloping nose with covered quartz halogen headlamps and a soft foam bumper system, fixed flush glass, an electric toll window. Power from the 455 Super Duty V8. It was Pontiac's first real push into slippery body shapes, quietly testing production ideas years before they showed up on any showroom floor. The Banshee III never reached production, but its ideas did. That foam front panel and covered headlight look showed up 3 years later on the 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, one of the best-selling Pontiacs of the decade. The fourth and final Banshee showed up at the 1988 Detroit Auto Show. It rode on a tube steel frame with a fiberglass body, measured 201 inches long and just 46 inches tall. The engine was something nobody had ever seen before. A 4-liter dual overhead cam 32-valve V8 with a one-piece block and head design that got rid of head gaskets entirely. It made 230 horsepower at 5,600 RPM. A head-up display threw speed readings onto the windshield. An early navigation system used cassette tape map data. The dashboard had dual screens, 4-wheel disc brakes with ABS, rode on 17-inch Goodyear tires. In 1988, most production cars didn't even have airbags yet. The Banshee 4 had tech that wouldn't show up in showrooms for another 10 to 20 years, and they locked it to 55 miles per hour for display use, because even as a concept, GM didn't trust what it could do. The gasketless engine was too pricey to build at scale. The body panels were too complex. For the fourth time in 24 years, General Motors said no. The Banshee 4 crossed into pop culture anyway. It showed up in Back to the Future Part 2 and Demolition Man. When Universal Studios wanted it for Knight Rider 2000, Pontiac refused to release the molds, so Universal had to build a copy out of a 1991 Dodge Stealth instead. Even Hollywood couldn't get its hands on the Banshee. But the real legacy wasn't in movies. Its twin-nostril nose, low cowl, and wedge profile became the direct blueprint for the 1993 Pontiac Firebird and Chevrolet Camaro. Pontiac's own press notes stated that the Banshee 4 was meant to set design themes that could be changed for production. The Banshee was always the future. GM just kept refusing to let it be the present. Everything the Banshee touched made it to production, just never under the Banshee name. The 1967 Firebird borrowed its tail lamps. The 1968 Corvette Stingray carried its entire body language. The Opel GT has been called a smaller XP833. Even the Pontiac Fiero traces its roots straight back to the XP833. The idea of a small, cheap fiberglass Pontiac sports car didn't start with the Fiero. It started 20 years earlier with 2 prototypes hidden in wooden crates. And then there's the car that came 40 years too late. When the 2006 Pontiac Solstice finally arrived, Bill Collins himself called it the spiritual offspring of the XP833. DeLorean's 1964 dream, made real 4 decades later by a company that was 4 years away from going out of business. The Solstice sold roughly 66,000 units across its 4-year run. DeLorean had guessed the Banshee would sell 30,000 per year. He might have been right. DeLorean never got over what GM did to his car. He quit General Motors in April 1973. Bill Collins left Pontiac in early 1974 to follow him. Together, they began work on the DeLorean DMC-12. The Banshee didn't just shape Pontiacs and Corvettes. It created the DeLorean, and somehow, the 2 original XP833 prototypes survived. When GM ordered the cars destroyed, Collins and master mechanic Bill Killen sealed both prototypes into wooden shipping crates. They stayed hidden inside Pontiac's engineering building for nearly a decade. In 1974, Killen took the silver coupe home through the GM purchasing department. Collins took the white convertible. Both men paid General Motors directly for the cars. Killen drove the silver coupe to cruise nights. He once parked what is now $1 million prototype in a Kmart parking lot in Waterford, Michigan, and nobody had any idea what they were looking at. After Killen passed in 2006, the coupe went to Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale, where it sold for $214,500. It later hit RM Amelia Island at $325,000 and Meckham Monterey at $400,000, neither meeting reserve. Today, it sits at a dealership in Connecticut listed for over $1 million. The white V8 convertible went from Collins to Chicago concept car collector Joe Bortz in 1988. Bortz has actually driven it on public roads, from Highland Park, Illinois to Milwaukee and back. He still owns it today. And here's a detail that changes how you think about the whole story. The cars were never called Banshee during their build. Every internal document says XP833. The name came from the McDonnell F-2H Banshee, a Navy fighter jet that DeLorean admired. The Irish folklore meaning a wailing spirit that warns of someone's passing felt too dark for a production Firebird. GM shut down Pontiac in 2010. The Banshee had been trying to save it since 1964. 4 concept cars, 24 years, 0 production units. The man who built the Banshee and saved it from the crusher was asked years later what he thought when the Pontiac Solstice finally arrived. Collins said it was a great idea. Then he said the chief engineer didn't give him enough knee room or he would have bought one. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe and check out the video on screen right now. I'll see you in the next one.